from we protect ourselves from hellfire, and we protect our families from hellfire. So how do we do that? How do we protect ourselves and our families from hellfire? We protect ourselves and our families from hellfire by learning the knowledge of Al-Islam and by implementing the teachings of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And how do we protect our families? By teaching them the knowledge of Al-Islam and by being a good example so that they can implement. And so we see here that there is a great responsibility upon the parents of the Muslim children, that they are obligated to raise their children in the proper Islamic way. We have the responsibility as parents to make sure that our Muslim children, that they learn the basics of the creed, that they learn the basics of the rules of the Islamic law, that they learn how to make wudu, that they learn how to pray as-salah, that they learn how to recite al-Fatiha, that they learn the integrals and the invalidators of fasting, that they learn that fornication is haram, that lying is haram, that drinking alcohol is haram, that killing unjustly is haram, that consuming riba is haram, learning the ethics and the values and the morals of Al-Islam right from a young age. Because the child, when they are growing up, they are like an empty container. Their hearts are like an empty container. And so whatever you fill up their container with, they will accept it. And so if you fill it up with filth and corruption and bad things, that container will accept it. And if you fill it up with goodness and purity and piety, then that container will accept it. Now that doesn't mean that the situation can't change. No. As parents, we cannot control the future. We cannot control our children's lives beyond adulthood. We cannot be there every single moment of their lives to tell them yes and no. Eventually they will live their own lives. But the norm is, if you raise your children the proper Islamic way, and you instill in them the values of Al-Islam, and you lead by example in the home, the children would grow up in that environment, and that would be their habit. They would be accustomed to praying. They would be accustomed to giving importance to obeying Allah. They would be accustomed to being repelled from the haram. But when you don't have those values present, what happens to them? They get devoured by the wolves of the dunya. So we as parents, right now when the children are at a young age, we have the responsibility. It is an obligation upon the guardians of the child to teach them the basics of the creed, to teach them the basics of the rules of the religion, to teach them the halal and the haram, what they need so that they can grow up to be upstanding adults and proper good Muslims and functioning members of society. But sometimes we as parents, we are not able ourselves to do that. Maybe because we don't know how to give the information, we don't know how to teach our children, and this is where we see the priceless value of the Islamic school, such as the Islamic Education School of Davie, Ties of Davie, Florida. Because as parents, we can entrust our children to such a place where they will do the job for us. They will teach our children what is an obligation upon us to make sure that they learn, and we can be safe and confident, and we can be secure that they are in good hands. And to find that, especially nowadays, at a time when there are a lot of frauds, there are a lot of scammers, there are a lot of people who do not have integrity, where they just have the outward appearance of an Islamic school, where they just appear to be an Islamic school, but in reality the inside is poison and rotten and corrupt and blasphemous. And it is worse than exposing the children to corruptions of the dunya. Vices and drugs and bad things in the dunya, those things, if the Muslim does them and he dies without repenting, that Muslim still has a chance for mercy because he died with the correct creed. But when a Muslim has his creed corrupted, and when a Muslim has his creed tainted and changed, and so he believes something that takes him out of Islam, then the one who dies that way will never be forgiven. So we don't go by appearances, and we don't go by the so-called worldly prestige. We don't go by the fanciness or the expensiveness of the building or the facility. We go by the quality of the content. Are they teaching the correct Islamic teachings? If the answer is yes, then go for it. But if the answer is no, then stay away and do not sell your children to the hellfire. Just because you want a name, just because you want it's popular or it's trendy, or this is have this facility or that facility, or they have money. It's not about the luxury, it's not about the fanciness, it's not about the prestige, it's not about, oh, that's, I want to use that name. No, it's about the quality of the content. So think about this, what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. He said, إِذَا مَاتَ ابْنُ آدَمْ انقطع عمله إلا من ثلاث صدقة جارية وعلم ينتفع به وولد صالح يدعو له. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that when the human being dies, the deeds that he does from accountability end. So he's not going to be praying the 5 daily prayers after death. He's not going to be fasting Ramadan after death. He's not going to be paying zakat after death, going to hajj after death. These deeds of accountability, they end once you die and pass into the next life. But the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam let us know that there are still certain things that the deceased Muslim benefits from as a residual consequence, a residual reward from something that he did while he was alive. So he mentioned 3 things. He mentioned a continuous charity. So like, let's say you plant a fruit-bearing tree, and that tree grows, and apples and fruits and things grow on it, and the birds come and they make their nest, and certain animals come and they eat the leaves. You get a reward for every time a living being benefits from that tree that you planted. This is a continuous charity. You donated halal money to build a masjid. So every time that someone prays in that masjid, every time that a living being benefits from that masjid, you get reward. This is a continuous charity. You paid the tuition for a student of knowledge, then every time that they benefit someone from that knowledge that they learned because of you helping them pay their way, you get a similar reward. This is a continuous charity. Sadaqah jariyah. That's the first thing he mentioned. The second thing is a knowledge that others benefit from. You teach a Muslim to make wudu. So every time they make wudu, after that you get a similar reward. You teach a Muslim to recite Al-Fatiha. So every time they recite Al-Fatiha, you get reward. You teach the Muslim how to pray. So every time they pray, you get a similar reward. You teach a Muslim, or you teach any beneficial knowledge, even reading and writing. You teach a young child how to read and write. Every time that they benefit from that knowledge that you taught them, you get a similar reward. That's the second thing that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, and that applies to the teachers. So remember, teachers, to correct your intention. The great reward that you have and to be patient on the hardships of going through this type of profession that, of course, you're not in it for the money, you're in it for the reward. And the third thing that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned is a pious offspring that makes supplication for you. So think of your child right now. They're 5, they're 6, they're 7, they're 10, right? They haven't even started their life. But then think now 10 years beyond, 20 years beyond, when they're 20 and 30 and 40, and maybe when you're 60 and 70 and 80, or after when you're in the grave. Wouldn't you be happy when you notice and you see your Muslim child that's all grown up as an adult coming to your grave and reciting Al-Fatiha for you, coming to your grave and making dua to Allah that He has mercy on you and that He widens your grave and that He illuminates your grave? How happy would you be? That is the good result of the sacrifice and the effort that you put in when they are small to give them the Islamic upbringing. So congratulations to all of you who are implementing that, and Allah Ta'ala has blessed you by enabling you and by providing you access to this great, priceless, invaluable institution, the Islamic Education School of Davie, Florida. We ask Allah Ta'ala to reward all of the people, all of the Muslims who have come together and cooperated and worked together to make that institution a success. From the teachers to the security to the brothers who volunteered to anyone who gets involved, any of the parents, may Allah Ta'ala reward you, and remember that the goodness that you do, it will never be lost. Any good deed that you do, it will be preserved, and you will see the good results of that on Judgment Day, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. We ask Allah Ta'ala to accept our fast. We ask Allah Ta'ala to accept our good deeds. We ask Allah Ta'ala to make us die as pious Muslims. We ask Allah Ta'ala to make our final words, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadun Rasulullah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. May God bless you all. Don't forget to make your intention to fast tomorrow and make supplication for us when you break your fast. Wassalamu alaikum. Nuhallil la ilaha illallah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Rabbi ighfir li wa lil mu'minina wal mu'minat wa barakallahu fikum. Just to let you know, we are doing Qiyam RamaDaan at 9:30 at Musalla as Sultan Salahuddin Al-Ayyubi on Griffin Road, and you are invited to